Ninjago has had basically little to none horror elements, which makes sense when you remember that this show is for 6-year-olds, with the closest to anything horror related being the 5th season, Possession, with the word horror being in massive quotation marks, as there's really nothing actually scary about this season. Actually, that Chima cameo does make me scream a little bit. And seeing how it's October, the supposed spooky month of the year, why not embrace the spooky season by injecting this children's franchise full of some good old horror? And what better way to accomplish this totally unnecessary concept by infecting Ninjago with one of the most overdone horror tropes, not jump scares, but zombies. I'm sure everybody watching already knows all about these brain-eating monsters. This little bastard has most likely killed all of us at least once. It feels like they are inescapable for a long period of time, with dozens of zombie movies and other media being pumped out, with everything else joining in on the craze of being infected by the zombie virus. Luckily for the inhabitants of Ninjago, the series has mostly stayed away from the whole zombie concept, with just a few characters being able to be labelled as zombies. The most obvious is the latest, being the Crystal Zombies who appeared in Crystallized. I mean, they're literally called the Crystal Zombies, of course they're zombies. By touching one of the Overlord's crystals or being hit by a crystal blast, you'd be turned into a very cool looking crystal zombie, with even the ninjas succumbing to such a virus. Actually, wait, how in the world does Zane get infected? He's a Nindroid. Surely that makes him immune to every kind of virus, right? Well, except for maybe a computer virus. These crystal zombies are pretty damn cool looking, with the all purple look and crystals sticking out from their bodies. A pretty good idea from a very lackluster season. Unlike the traditional zombie, these guys don't seem to have a hankering for human flesh, so they're practically the PG family friendly version of a zombie. I feel like the Blizzard Samurai could also be labelled as a zombie-like faction, with a good amount of them being people infected by the Ice Emperor's corrupted ice and turned into the Blizzard Samurai. I mean, if you ask me, they sure do look like zombies. Going all the way back to Season 2, we have the black substance known as Dark Matter, having the ability to turn people into a sickly, grey, and mindlessly aggressive version of themselves, as we saw with the ninja, which to me is pretty much just like a zombie. Minus the whole brain-eating part, of course. All three of these ideas are close, but not quite what I would want from a hypothetical Ninjago Zombies storyline. So why don't I just make my own? It would be pretty interesting to work out what Ninjago characters will be able to survive a zombie apocalypse, along with what unfortunate souls will be converted into a flesh-eating monster. The whole concept of this Ninjago zombie apocalypse will be very heavily inspired by the 2005 Marvel Zombies comic series, which I could honestly gush about all day, but since nobody actually cares, I'll just give a basic rundown of what we'll be keeping for our Ninjago Zombies story. Basically, a zombie virus manages to infect the entire Marvel universe, turning everyone's favorite superheroes into brain-eating monsters, which is bad enough, but even worse when the heroes keep all of their superpowers and abilities when transformed into zombies, along with keeping their minds, remembering everything before and after the infection, remembering everyone they've ever eaten as a zombie. Some pretty hardcore stuff for sure, which I think would be perfect for a very gritty and bone-chilling Ninjago Zombies story, allowing the Ninjago characters to keep their elemental powers and other abilities like Spinjitzu after being infected would certainly make them a lot harder to fight off, and the fact that they keep their personalities and memories after being infected adds a good bit of tragedy to the zombies themselves, as even after being turned into zombies, deep down they're still the same characters. With the type of zombies we'll be dealing with covered, what exactly would even cause the zombie virus to begin with? Perhaps the merge brought with it a deadly infectious virus, which thanks to all the realms being combined, was able to quickly spread across the newly merged realms and infect all kinds of different living beings, such as these snail creatures and even the already terrifying looking treehorns, with the virus only leaving very few survivors. I think it should be obvious that all types of Skulkin are completely safe from the virus, since, they're just bones. While everyone else is terrified for their lives and fighting off zombies, it's really just another Tuesday for the skeletons. So why don't we now start getting into the details of which Ninjago characters would be able to survive this zombie virus. Of course, starting with the ninja team themselves. Before tackling the 6 ninja we've known for so long, let's take a little bit of time to see if the newest recruits to the team will be part of the lucky few able to outlast the virus. Spoiler alert, they are not lucky at all. Right now, I think it's way too soon to actually determine if Sora, Aaron, and Wildfire would be able to survive this zombie virus. So I'm just gonna make these unlucky 3 our first group of undead zombies due to their lack of experience. Wildfire would most likely survive the longest out of the new trio, as her bootleg fire element would do a good job at getting rid of a lot of zombies in a horde. But unfortunately, her hot-headedness and again lack of experience would turn out to be her undoing. Her animal-like nature and elemental power will definitely make her a tough zombie for the survivors to fight off. Our next victim is another elemental master, being Ninjago's version of an e-girl, Sora. With her tech power, she could maybe last a good while, building many different kind of zombie-slaying machines and fighting in her very overpriced mech. But eventually, the virus will claim her and turn her into an elemental zombie. Her tech power and overall tech knowledge could easily be used against any survivors using any kind of technology, being used to instantly shut down any vehicles or other machines being used against the zombies. Lastly, out of the newbies, we of course have the elemental master of, well, nothing, Aaron, who, you guessed it, will end up becoming an orange ninja zombie. If the previous 2 with elemental powers couldn't survive, there's no way he's gonna survive this zombie apocalypse. Sure, he could try to use his spinjitzu throwing ability, but that's not really gonna get him very far if he's surrounded on all sides by a horde of zombies. His grappling hook though would be pretty handy in a situation like that. With the 3 new additions to the cast unfortunately falling victim to the zombie virus, we can now start seeing which of the 6 original ninja would be able to survive the virus, and who would unfortunately join Aaron, Sora, and Wildfire in becoming part of the endless zombie horde devouring the merged realms. I suppose it makes sense to begin with the ninja who I think would end up getting infected before any of the others, which is really gonna hurt to say, as I think that the first ninja would fall to a zombie virus would be Jay. It feels like a dagger was just stabbed through my heart. As much as I love Jay, trust me, I would not have bought this pen if he wasn't my favourite character. I do believe that our favourite lightning ninja would be the first out of the ninja to succumb to a deadly zombie virus. I feel like the power of lightning wouldn't be very effective against the zombies. Also, knowing the current wild brain Jay, he would stupidly just walk right up to a zombie and get bitten within the first 10 seconds of the virus, quickly transforming into a lightning-powered zombie, capable of stunning his prey with his powers, before digging in and enjoying a probably very plastic-tasting meal. Next up would be the Master of Fire himself, Kai, and thanks to his command over the power of fire, Kai will be one of the ninja to survive the zombie outbreak, being one of the few survivors left. The elemental power of fire would be extremely useful when Kai finds himself cornered by a bunch of brain-eating zombies, with Kai being able to easily light up the undead monsters and burn them all into nothing but rotten flesh. Kai's years of ninja experience will also be vital in keeping him from turning to the side of the zombies. At least he'd have the best looking hair out of all the zombies if he did turn. Following Kai, we have the white ninja Zane, who, being a ninjroid, is obviously going to be safe from the zombie infection. The only thing that will happen when a zombie bites him is that the zombie will need a new batch of chompers. The only real damage the zombies could do to Zane is just ripping him apart and destroying his body, which we've seen before is practically useless, as Zane can simply upload himself to a brand spanking new body, maybe adding some new anti-zombie upgrades every time. Zane for sure would be a very useful member of the survivors, with his elemental power of ice, his large intellect, and the fact that he's basically invincible. Moving on from the unkillable Ninjroid, Nia's fate is next up, and unfortunately for everyone's favourite tall glass of water, she'll be joining her beloved Jay in becoming a brain-devouring monster. This choice really just came down to the fact that having both Kai and Nia survive would really undercut the severity of this supposed virus, and it would also add some great conflict within the actual story, with Kai of course not very happy with the fact that his only sister has turned into a zombie and is now trying to kill him and the other survivors. Nia's powers also just don't seem very useful against a horde of zombies, especially zombies with elemental powers. One zap from zombified Jay and she would be done for. She could maybe flood a large area filled with zombies, but all that would really do is simply slow them down, as I'm pretty sure she can't drown zombies. But as a zombie herself, she could easily use her control over the element of water against any group of survivors, flooding the area they're hiding out in and trying to drown them with her powerful waves of water. If Nia was still in her pure water form from the end of Seabound, she would easily be able to survive the zombie infection, as there's literally nothing for the zombies to sink their teeth into. They'd just be getting a small drink of water. But sadly for her, the Ninjago riders really screwed her over. From a ninja who had succumbed to the deadly zombie virus, to a ninja who would be lucky enough to remain a human, that ninja being the earth elemental, Cole. Cole is for sure one of the strongest out of the ninja group, so it shouldn't be too much of a surprise to hear that this beefcake will be able to keep himself from turning into an undead monster. The power of earth would be very helpful in fighting off the zombies, throwing large boulders at them or simply raising the ground to create a wall between the humans and elemental powered zombies. And now with his newest power up in Dragon's Rising Part 2, where he can transform into this large rock form, he is practically immune to the virus, as he's just a bunch of rocks stuck together with no human flesh to be bitten. And now for the final team member, we of course have the legendary Green Ninja himself, Lloyd Garmadon, who, being the main character of the entire show, is protected by heavy plot armor and remains human with not a single scratch on him. Lloyd, being one of the survivors, doesn't just come down to his massive plot armor, but the fact that he has both Oni and Dragon Blood, making him entirely invincible to any bite from the infected zombies, which is great for the survivors, as if Lloyd were a zombie, using his incredibly strong power against him, they would have absolutely no chance and would not be called the survivors for much longer. With every ninja's fate decided, what about their old and frail mentor Sensei Wu? Would this zombie virus finally get rid of the old man? Well, I think it 100% would. Even though Wu does have dragon blood like Lloyd, I don't think that'll be enough to save him from the rabid elemental powered zombies, with the wise master finally meeting his end at the hands of the many undead zombies taking over the merged realms, and we thank them for their service. Since I briefly mentioned Wu's dragon blood, let's briefly touch on what would happen to the fate of Ninjago's many majestic dragons. Would they be vulnerable to the virus, transforming into massive zombie dragons? As awesome as that sounds, it also sounds extremely OP, making it practically impossible for the small band of survivors to fight back. Because of this, I've decided to deem every dragon too majestic to become infected, being immune to the rabid virus spreading across the merged realms. Perhaps the mighty dragons might actually be the key to curing this mysterious zombie plague. If you really want zombie dragons, then you are in luck. Since all of the elemental masters have an elemental dragon, it would make sense for the dragons to also be turned into zombies if their users become infected. To decide the fate of other Ninjago characters, why not have a quick fire round to see who will and won't make it out of this zombie apocalypse alive. Starting with an obvious survivor, we have Pixel, who, just like Zane and every other Nindroid character, would of course be completely immune to this infection. Then there's Pixel's creator Cyrus Borg, who is definitely not making it out alive in that wheelchair. Unless he sticks a massive superpowered jet onto the back of it, those zombies are going to be eating the rich. With Skylar, you would think she would be able to survive, right? Having the elemental power of Amber grants her the ability to copy the element of anyone she touches. Well, she would soon find out that her power is rendered useless against the zombies, as the virus is somehow able to prevent Skylar's powers from working, which, sadly for the redhead, will result in a nasty transformation into a zombie. Damn, poor Kai. Both his girlfriend and sister are turned into zombies, with his parents most likely facing a similar fate. Well, at least he gets to keep his elemental powers this time, because that's all that truly matters to him. Out of all the Ninjago characters, Ronin would most likely be thriving in a zombie outbreak, easily tearing through the elemental zombies with his skills and numerous different gadgets, gizmos, and whatchamacallits. You would certainly hope that Griffin Turner doesn't get infected. With this element of speed, the virus will be travelling around the merged realms like an express train. Garmadon, being as powerful as he is, could for sure keep the zombies from infecting him. All he really has to do is transform into whatever this is to scare them all away. With his strength and power of shielding himself in metal, Karloff secures himself a spot on the survivors list. Meanwhile, Nero isn't as lucky, having probably the worst element for this zombie outbreak. How is being the master of the mind going to help him? What's he gonna do, telepathically tell all the zombies to go eat Burger King instead of him? Just like Nero, I don't think Shade's powers will be very helpful against a horde of zombies. I don't think poison will be very effective against a bunch of zombies, but a zombie with the element of poison could do some real damage to the survivors. A bunch of trees and plants are not gonna save Bolobo from joining the massive amount of infected characters. Dude could just turn invisible and the zombies would walk right past him. As some old guy once said, what goes up must come down, and I think Gravis will be plummeting into a large herd of zombies and becoming one of them. I suppose she could transform herself into a zombie to go unnoticed by the infected. It would be pretty funny if the blind guy was able to outlive everyone else in the zombie apocalypse, but his chances ain't looking so good. I feel like the ability to see is a pretty key part of surviving a massive zombie apocalypse. Ash's power of smoke could certainly come in handy in getting away from the undead monsters, but when it comes to fighting them off, that's where he'll unfortunately fall victim to the infectious virus. Fugitive does not fear the zombies, as the zombies should fear him. But zombie Fugitive would be pretty kick-ass. With a handful of characters either deemed lucky enough to survive or turn into zombies, the small band of survivors are gonna need somewhere to hide away from the zombies. So what iconic Ninjago locations would be safe enough? The monastery isn't a very good location for this situation. 1, because it's always getting destroyed, and 2, it is a very obvious location to hide out in. The zombie ninja will have no problem in getting to the monastery and finding the survivors. The Samurai X cave is certainly a better choice than a monastery, as unlike the monastery, it's not left wide in the open, with it all being constructed underground. But it's probably best as a temporary location, as with Nia being a zombie, she would surely remember her old cave base and come hunting for the remaining humans. Imperium would actually be one of the better places to use as a base. Sure, it's pretty obvious and easy for the zombies to find, but getting in is a totally different situation. Thanks to his force field surrounding the entire city, keeping the zombies out should be no problem, and it's definitely large enough to keep every non-infected person safe. Dr. Julian's lighthouse is also a pretty good place to hide away from the elemental zombies. It's pretty far away from anything else, and is surrounded by nothing but water, so it could be a challenge for most of the zombies to reach it. But for Zombie Jay and Nia, this place would quickly turn into a buffet. Since it's surrounded entirely by water, all it would take is one flick of Zombie Nia's wrist, and everyone better hope they brought their floaties. Sensei Yang's Temple of Air Jutsu isn't the worst idea. With it being so high up in the sky, it seems like a safe enough location, with it being pretty hard to reach for most of the zombies. Out of all the possible bases the survivors could use, I would say the Destiny's Bounty would for sure be the best. It's large enough to hold a decent amount of survivors, and with it being a flying ship, can easily travel across the merged realms and be constantly on the move, which would be the best thing to do during this elemental zombie outbreak. And that's basically all I have for a potential Ninjago zombie story. God knows LEGO would never actually do it, but it's still fun to imagine the somewhat gory details of our favorite ninja becoming brain-eating monsters. If my choices for zombies and survivors are different from yours, then why not drop your list of which Ninjago characters you think would survive a zombie infection in the comments below, along with what locations you think would work best for the survivors. I certainly wouldn't say no to perhaps a Halloween themed Ninjago special, or book of sorts, with some kind of zombie inclusion like we talked about in this video. Because, hey, who doesn't want to see their childhood heroes turn into flesh-devouring monsters? But, knowing Ninjago, they would just make the infection the ultimate form of the Overlord.